Even before OJ was seen on national television outrunning the police in his Bronco, we've enjoyed a love affair with the 4x4, the sports utility vehicle. And it must be an image thing. It must be. It has to be about image. What other reason could there possibly be for buying a car that's thirstier, more cramped, and doesn't go around corners as well as a family hatch? And if it is an image thing, then Chrysler have been getting it right for some years with this, the Cherokee. It was first introduced into this country in '93, and it looked like that, since which they've sold 27,000, and the car now looks like this. Pretty much like the original one, really, but if a car is selling that well on its image, why change it? This is the new range topper for the Cherokee, and it's called the Orvis. Based on the limited SE, the top spec Cherokee, which means you already get on board pretty much everything your heart could desire. There's acres of leather and electric everything, including the seat, which is fun. It also means you have a choice of either the 2.5 litre diesel or the 4 litre petrol engines. That means there is no choice because you've got to have the 4 litre petrol. It's a straight 6 and it puts out enormous great dollops of torque. It feels like it's just clawing lumps out of the road. I keep expecting to look in the mirror and see the tarmac all ruckled up like in a cartoon. The Orvis then adds on to that quite a few cosmetic changes outside and in. And it's interesting to see some of the ways in which the car itself has evolved over the years. And here are some of those ways. If you look really carefully, you'll see that the indicators at the front and the grille have subtly changed shape. The car's been extensively rounded off, it's lost some of its squareness, and details like the sills with their ridges have changed and become a lot plainer and cleaner. The interior has been extensively changed over the years. Everything has been rounded off and become a bit softer, perhaps less American, if anything more Japanese in flavour. They're all pretty luxurious. Leather abounds, there's plenty of walnut, though not as much now as there once was. The Orvis version adds further visual cues outside, including the rear boot spoiler, its own special alloys, and these. There's an interesting story about these. They are false. They are a mere adornment. They do nothing. And the managing director of Chrysler UK decided that he liked them and wanted to conduct some customer research of his own at the motor show last year. So he got hold of a set of these, literally stuck them to the bonnet with a bit of blue tack and asked passers-by what they thought. They agreed with him that they looked great. And so there they are. What it is to have power. But hold on, you will say. This thing has a 4 litre 6-cylinder engine. It's going to cost me all of my money to run it. And it probably will. You'll be lucky to see 18 miles to the gallon. But a large part of the real cost of running any vehicle is in the residuals. How much money do you lose when you come to sell it on? If you'd bought one of these 4 or 5 years ago and done, as this one has, about 102,000 miles, it would still be worth £10,000. That is incredible value. I like the Jeep Cherokee. In an increasingly bland and homogenised world, it's managed to hang on to a little bit of character and personality. Sure, there are those who are going to complain that it's a bit more cramped inside than it might be and that it uses a lot of fuel and perhaps is a bit dated to look at. But to do so is to miss the point entirely. They're probably the same people that complain that they can't get a good crease down the front of the jeans these days. To me, it's an attractive car and it's got a lot for it, particularly when you consider that, okay, it uses a lot of petrol. But if this example, 100,000 miles old, 5 years old, and still retaining 50% of its original value, is any kind of illustration of what you or I might expect if we buy a new Cherokee Orvis, then I think we can forgive it using a bit more fuel than perhaps it should.
As a young lad, I was desperate to be a cowboy. Out on the range, way out west, on my favourite horse. Well, as you can see, I've got trigger, I've got the gear, I look like a man from Marlborough. There's only one problem. I found out that as the years have gone by, horses are not really as comfortable as I thought they were. So I've had to decide rather reluctantly that I'm going to become an urban cowboy. And that means only one thing. This vehicle. Because the modern American cowboy's trusty steed is a pickup truck. And in pickup trucks, this is the absolute champion, the wonder horse. This is the Ford F-150 Lightning, and I'm going to put it through its paces. Inside the F-150, it's pretty much standard pickup fare on the dash, as you can see. Has a tinny type of pickup sound. The American love affair with a column change, which is actually quite easy once you get used to it. But there are some lovely little touches. The seats have got very sporty ebony leather and something called medium graphite cloth, which I haven't a clue what it means, but looks and feels rather nice. This little seat here fits back and forwards like that, so if you've got no third passenger, you can open it up. Bags of cubby spaces. You've got little things in the doors. This one opens up for CD players. You've got little outlets down the back where you can put your tools if you're mechanically minded. And no sunroof, but we do have a nice little side window here so you can holler for the horse when you get back to the ranch at night. The other thing I do like about this machine is the feeling of space. It is classic American. This is big inside, bags of room, and it feels ever so comfortable. And I think your average transit driver, well, I think he'd be pretty sick at the look of this. The Lightning may only have 3 seats, but you've got to remember we're talking about a pickup, and this is a large pickup. You can move just about anything you like in the back of this. It's got enough to take the kitchen sink and the front living room as well. Look at that. Flip the accelerator on the F-150 and you realise what this beast is all about. Sheer brute power. It's raw and it's instantly responsive. 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds. That's the type of speed that would depress a lot of sports car owners. Quarter of a mile comes up in 14.9, and if you've got enough courage it'll go all the way to 140. This is the fastest pickup you're ever likely to see. What's really impressed me about the F-150 is how comfortable it is. It's very civilized, which seems like a contradiction having said how much brute force it's got. But if you want to drive it slowly around town, you just put it into drive on the auto box and you just cruise along there. It really is like sitting in a very sumptuous armchair. Same situation on a motorway. It will sit very quietly all day at 70, and it makes a very good long distance cruiser, apart from the fuel consumption, that is, which is not really one of its great strengths. In fact, unless you've got a fat checkbook, you've got a problem. We're talking under 20 to the gallon. In fact, I love just about everything about this 150. I like the way it makes me feel. I feel like, not king of the road, but, you know, a bit like John Wayne sitting high in the saddle. Yeah. Yes, a sort of junior duke. I love the looks you get from it. It is very, very different. And in fact, I don't think I'm going to be a cowboy anymore on a horse. I think I was made to be an urban cowboy. And this is my trusty steed.
Off-road driving, piece of cake. Just swing your wheel onto the grass and off into the boondocks. You've seen it a million times in television adverts for 4x4 vehicles. There's nothing to it. Well, some manufacturers think there actually is a little bit more to driving off-road. This is the imposing facade of Duncan Park here in North Yorkshire, one of 7 venues right across the country where Mercedes-Benz are offering specialist cross-country off-road driving courses to people who buy these vehicles, the new Mercedes-Benz M Class. It's often said that the most serious obstacle most of these big off-roaders will have to overcome is the curb outside the school or the speed humps in the supermarket car park. It's true that around 80% never even get their tyres muddy, but that's to miss the important psychological point of these cars, that if you wanted to drive up a mountain, well, you could. And people have to know that the reality of off-road performance really lives up to those brochure claims before they'll buy. The course costs £220 and that includes luncheon at the stately home of your choice. At the moment, around 5% of new M-Class owners are taking up Mercedes-Benz offer, but they hope that figure will improve substantially in the future. So let's see what's on offer. So, Andy, you're one of the instructors on this Mercedes-Benz course. What sort of things are you telling your customers?
The idea really is to give people a good sense of what their car can do off-road and to give an idea of what its capabilities are and what they can expect from it. It's not so much about racing around and tearing through the countryside, it's just finding out what you can expect from the ground, what things look like, what it feels like to be on mud or to be on a steep slope, and how to do it safely.
First impressions off-road are really good. The vehicle rides really smoothly with its all-independent suspension. None of Land Rover's beloved beam axles here. Getting into low range is simplicity itself, and then you just sit back and let the automatic transmission and the complicated electronics look after you. A lot of electronic gizmos on this. I mean, you know, as a dyed-in-the-wool old Land Rover man, I mean, I don't need to bother about transfer boxes and low ratio levers and anything else, really.
No, that's all been simplified, really. When you want to go off-road, slot the car into neutral, press the low range button, turn the ESP off, and off you go. In the old days where there was a direct link to the wheels, you could hit a rock hard and the wheel would spin and you'd lose a joint. But with the power steering these days, you can pretty much control it with one hand most of the time.
This is very close to all the courses on offer around the country. The object, say Mercedes-Benz, is not to build an immensely challenging or frightening series of obstacles, more to follow the tracks that gamekeepers and foresters would use to get around the estates. And that's not to say you won't get a lot of fun on steep hills and water splashes. I think this Mercedes course is an excellent idea. It's not cheap at £220, but the vehicles aren't cheap either, and you get an excellent lunch in a stately home thrown in. However, Mercedes say that if more people do take up the course, well, it could be provided free as part of the purchase of the car. And that's something I'd like to see a lot more 4x4 manufacturers doing.
Now here is a piece of history. Here's something that you can track back to the war, wartime necessity, right up to the hulking great 4x4s that come from Japan now and that we can see taking kids to school all over the world. Back then in the war, the need was there for a lightweight general purpose vehicle. General purpose, GP, that's where the name Jeep came from. The necessity was that it had to be able to be carried by 4 blokes, and it can be, there's handles to prove it. it had to be as agricultural and as basic as you could possibly make a car. And it is. And that's how the whole shape came about, the high mudguards. There's no curve on the mudguards. Every single part of it is as simple to make and to repair as is humanly possible. But of course that shape became an icon, really, that influenced subsequent off-roaders through generations and generations and generations. And it all started here, the Willys Jeep, the answer to that need. And it's fantastic. Now, a friend of mine had one of these, and it's a nightmare. 55 miles an hour is absolutely the most you can possibly expect, and keeping it going in a straight line is going to be next to impossible. But what an important, influential vehicle. Apart from its role in the war, the cars that followed on from this, in their millions, it's great. And also, you can do this. I've always wanted to do this. Whoop. Well, you know. That's it, really.
In America, they just love them. No, I'm not talking about burgers, donuts or muffins. I'm talking about pickup trucks. Why Americans have this fascination with pickup trucks, I really just can't understand, to be honest. And you don't have to be a hillbilly redneck swilling bourbon to drive one. They've now become family vehicles with large cabs, luxury accommodation, and in the case of something like the Dodge Ram, a seriously fast beast that can outdrag most sports cars. So it's interesting that Ford have decided to launch this, the new Ranger, here in the UK. Now, apparently our lifestyles demand this sort of vehicle. It's going to be the next big trend. Does your lifestyle demand a pickup truck? No, and I'm not sure that mine does either. Perhaps it's more the case that Mitsubishi have the L200 introduced now in the UK, and Toyota have the Hilux. But at the moment, the pickup truck market here in Britain is only worth 0.13% of total vehicles sold. So in other words, the market share is tiny for this sort of vehicle, unlike this rather big beast, which is big in every way, apart from what's under the bonnet. Now, you get a choice of two 2.5 litre diesel engines. The first kicks out only 78 brake horsepower and is an indirect injection diesel. This second one is better. It produces 109 brake horsepower. It's turbocharged and intercooled. It's the same 2.5 litre engine. But let's face it, neither engine is going to produce really any sort of excitement. And you can imagine both of them struggling up a fairly large hill with a full payload and a trailer on the back.
It's all very well producing an off-roader that looks the part, but if in reality it's nothing more than a King's Road cruiser that won't even cut through the skin of your custard, then what's the point? But if you've got this badge on the front of your 4x4, it's a pretty safe bet that you can get into some serious mischief in it, particularly when you've got the whole of the Scottish Highlands to go at. Well, I've got my Grand Cherokee, it's got all the technology and it's time to put it to the test. There's an off-road course in the Scottish Highlands waiting for me. One of the rules in off-roading is that when you go down a hill, you don't use the brakes. They're very strict on this. However, this hill is so bad that they've told us we have to use the brakes this time. Can't wait for this one.
I can't believe we're going to go down that. We're going to go straight into the lock. I must be mad. Oh! Oh, God, have you seen that thing go?
Well, it was a struggle to get up here, but once you're at the top, I've got to say the views are absolutely spectacular. And I've just learnt a survival tip. If you get stranded in the wilderness without any toilet paper, just grab a handful of moss. That was absolutely amazing. I've had such a good time up there. And I'd like to say that it's my driving skill that's got me through it all. But I've got to be honest and say that when you're in a vehicle like the new Grand Cherokee, all you really need to do is put your trust in the vehicle and just keep an eye on where you're going. This is just so competent. Now, I know that 93% of off-roaders never see more than the odd trundle up a country lane or maybe the school run. But if you fancy finding out what an off-roader can really do, then I can report that the Grand Cherokee performs as well on-road as it does off. Go on, go and find yourself some mud. You don't know what you're missing.